Good morning, students. This is Professor Apurva Deshpande, Assistant Professor, AIKTC School of Architecture, Bangalore. This lecture titled Pedestrian and Barrier-Free Design is part of a series of lectures on road safety under the Urban Studies module for Allied Design subject for Semester 7 fourth year students. The lecture has been created on Microsoft PowerPoint, and I'm grateful to the platforms of Studio Forminet and Studio 4 for sharing valuable information about their projects on their official website, which are open for everyone to access. I'm also grateful to Hindustan Times and change.org for their official platforms where they share valuable opinions from the public and through their articles, which are very valuable for us to use. Let us begin. Footpaths are for walking. This is a very obvious statement. Footpaths are meant for walking, for people to easily and safely travel on the roads. Footpaths are for walking and for hawking. So as you see in the scene in front of you, a lot of hawking, illegal hawking is happening on the street. The street is one of the main streets it is one of the main roads in Dadar, in the heart of the city of Mumbai. And you can see that this market area has occupied completely the pavement and parts of the road as well, where handcars have been parked and pedestrians are actually walking in the center of the road, leaving hardly any space for vehicles to ply. Footpaths are for walking and for hawking and for selling. As you can see, this is a residential building under which there is a commercial showroom which has been reserved. And on the facade of the building, next to the gate of the entry of the building, you can see that this particular person has put on his clothes store. The pavement has been occupied by a lot of informal hawking, vending, etc. And people are standing on the platform and on the road to buy, and pedestrians are actually walking on the road, as you can see in the image. Footpaths are for hawking, for selling. Footpaths are also for dwelling. The scene is outside Mahim railway station in Mumbai, where you can see that the compound wall of the railway premises has been used as support for creating this sort of a shelter under which people are living their lives. They live there on the pavements and almost onto the roads as well. A very unsafe idea, but this is how people are also using pavements in the city. Footpaths are for dwelling and for disappearing in the blur. So this image again is from Dadar on any festive day. As you can see over here, the entire street right from Kabutar Khana to Dadar station on the other end is filled with people, leaving hardly any space for the public taxis to fly. The not just the formal shops which are there, but also the informal vending which is happening and the hawking which is happening on the road has occupied the entire street, thus leaving no space for uh, even a single person to be part of this whole chaos. Thus, it's causing a blur. Footpaths are for disappearing into the blur, or for questioning their existence. As you can see in the image, this particular IC chamber, which is situated right in the middle of the pavement, which is again a questionable form of existence. Uh, you can see that the condition of this particular IC chamber is very poor. There have been attempts to maybe mend it, to repair it, but to no avail. And you can see that the garbage and everything is getting stuck into the IC chamber over here. There's a compound wall or a fencing sort of a thing which has been given for the pavements that vehicles do not enter onto the pavements. And we can see that the condition of that fencing also is very poor. It's broken down and it's bending down onto the trees on the side of the pavement, and leaving no space for the people to walk actually onto this pavement. So footpaths are for questioning their existence. So as we saw in the images earlier, footpaths are for multiple uses, apart from walking, hawking, selling, vending, disappearing into the blur, and also questioning whether there is any pavement to walk or not. Hence, this lecture on pedestrian circulation and barrier-free design in the Indian context, which is very different from the Western context that we usually see. The Indian context is filled with a lot of informality, a lot of illegalities, a lot of informal activities and entrepreneurships and economies which actually take place in between the built form and the open space that is there. So these in between spaces, these pavements are a question as to if they can dedicate it to one particular idea of walking. We will now look at a few examples of how this particular issue has been handled by different stakeholders. So this is the people. The people represented by change.org in their petition levy hefty fine for unauthorized hawkers in Mumbai and in car owners for parking on roads. This petition by change.org from the people is actually talking about the woes of the people saying चलने के लिए जगह ही नहीं होती है यहाँ ऐसा ही चलता है, meaning there is never any space to walk. This will continue to happen in our city. On the other hand, we have media and agencies asking why walking on Mumbai streets is a nightmare. What is the government doing about this? The nation wants to know. So, questions from the media agencies which are representing the people. And on the other hand, we have government, the main stakeholder, and then the government we are seeing is talking about creating road safety by redesigning certain railway stations or junctions, which cause this kind of a chaotic environment within the city. And then the government says there are rules about it, but people just don't want to change their irresponsible behavior. So as we can see here, the three stakeholders are actually questioning the others without looking at themselves. We'll look at a case study over here. We look at a project over here where uh, Studio Pomegranate, a firm based in Mumbai, has looked at the public environment through their project in Lower Parel. So this project, which is a walkway outside Motilal Oswal Tower, Prabhadevi, is the is talking about the idea of walkability through its design. The strategies that have been used will be discussed in this project. So the idea of not having to walk a long length in a necessarily straight line plays an important part in walkability. And the use of existing elements such as landscape, planters, or the existing economies becomes very important in the redesign of any given platform. So Mumbai Mirror has also stated that look BMC here's a footpath we should replicate across Mumbai, causing this to be maybe an ideal project to look at parameters, design parameters which will help us redesign the pavements in the city. The project talks about inclusivity, which is a cobbler's shop. The design accommodates this existing business, making the cobbler also a stakeholder and part owner, having some sense of ownership onto the space. And hence, his shop has been part of the construction process to give him allotted space to conduct his business. The project also talks about accessibility, which keeps in mind the design being universal for somebody who is physically disabled, as this particular disabled handicap telephone booth is operating from onto the platform, onto the pavement here. Accessibility also not just for the disabled but also for the young children, for children who have just begun to walk, for parents with a stroller, and how difficult it becomes for them to climb onto the pavements while crossing the roads, etc. So ramps not just for them, for the young children, for the disabled, for parents with strollers, and also for senior citizens who find it very difficult to climb onto the pavements, which are sometimes very larger in height. So the idea of accessibility by designing appropriate ramps at appropriate places where people would be getting onto the pavement. The concept of walkability, of not walking in a straight line but walking with halts and pauses, during the movement, which creates chance interactions. Hence, crooked line walking, where you get and where you are able to design smaller niches where people can halt or wait and talk to each other in case of any chance interactions or just wait by in the area. The concept of walkability also talks about being using multiplicity in your design, where you also include a bus stop maybe, or the idea of having smaller avenues or niches where you can wait in case of any situation. And hence the principles of pedestrian and barrier-free design can be listed as this. Footpaths or sidewalks can reduce crash risk by separating vehicle and pedestrians. Hence, we know the importance of footpaths, especially in urban areas and metropolitan cities like Mumbai. A safe pedestrian route implies that pedestrians are well protected from road hazards, vehicle speeds, pedestrian exposure risk, and driver and pedestrian predictability. These are the hazards which pedestrians need to be saved from, and hence the design of footpaths become very important. Security refers to not just uh, the security of people from vehicles, but also from susceptibility to robbery, sexual harassment, etc., other crimes. And hence, the physical design of the streets become very important during this kind of a security and increasing the number of eyes on the streets, which in turn can increase the security. Directness involves a pedestrian path that minimizes the distance traveled to access the public transport station, so including public transport networks or public transport elements onto your pavement become very important over here. Legibility of an area refers to the ease in understanding the street environment. So signages become very important to understand systems legibility. Like signages which are not just for people who can see, but those as well who can't see or may not be able to understand them clearly, and hence audio or specially designed signages for all kinds of people in society. The steepness of the incline, the presence of weather protection becomes very important when walking onto the roads, hence protection from rain or harsh sun. And level of comfort that is provided in the design becomes very important for the pedestrians, and hence the quality of pedestrian corridors will definitely improve when these pointers are taken into consideration. Universal access, meaning removing all the physical barriers, avoiding excessive customer volumes, and dividing the customer volumes accordingly, providing a safe route, minimizing conflicts, detours, and designing from the perspective of parents with a stroller, a child, an older adult, or a physically disabled person can result in good design for everyone. So, as we saw over here through our case study as well, the importance of payments in the city, the stakeholders of this particular understanding of payments and the users who definitely should be responsibly using the payments as well. Also including hawking, vending, and even transit systems in smaller or larger ways in the design of the pavement also becomes important over here. This is just the first part of the lecture, and the further parts on the series will look at different ways of barrier free and universal designs. Thank you.